The junk wax era might not be my personal favorite era, but there's no denying that it has some of the most iconic sports cards of all time. Today I'm counting down the top 25 most valuable junk wax cards of all time. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Dive video powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and today I'm doing something fun. I love top 10 lists, top 25 lists, all-time lists, all these types of things. I love it. I love sitting around with a coffee or a libation and talking to my friends and debating all these types of lists. And today I'm counting down the 25 most valuable junk wax cards of all time, the junk wax sports cards, an era that many of us know that the guys here that buy at Cards HQ kind of cringe at, because so many people every single day bring in their multi-row boxes or their old shoe boxes or their brown binders and other things full of junk wax cards that they had hopes and dreams would pay for their retirement someday. And in actuality, most of them are really not worth anything. But you might be sitting on some of those cards, and there are some cards with real value. Now, the big caveat in this is because there was really no variety back then, it was just base cards, base cards, base cards, largely printed to the moon, you have to make sure they're in good condition. And even if you kept them perfectly stored inside of a case or something else, there can still be issues, most notably a lot of times centering issues, as one of the 4 criteria that PSA and other companies evaluate when you get your cards graded. If the centering isn't right, which has nothing to do with how you stored your cards, it can still not get a great grade. So what I wanted to do was actually go through and look at cards that you might actually have, that cards that are accessible to everybody. If you collected back then or you've inherited a collection, you very well might be sitting on some of these cards. So what I did was I looked at PSA 9 condition of all of these cards from the junk wax era. And then I looked at cards that have to have a population count in PSA 9 condition of 200 or higher. So what I was trying to do was filter out, for example, like all the 1987 Fleer basketball cards of players that you've never heard of or nobody really cares about, that in PSA 9 or especially 10 condition do really well. But that set in particular had a lot of centering issues. And as a result, the gem rates are very low, the price tag very high for the set completionists and others. So I didn't want to look at those. I also didn't want to look at something like, a ton of Desert Shield cards or Tiffany cards, things that are really high price tags, again, because they were low distribution, low print run. They don't really fit in the mold of the junk wax era. I will give a caveat that there may be a couple of those on this list where they passed my threshold of being a 9 and pop 200 or higher. So we'll look at those, but this is going to be overall a really fun countdown. Hopefully you can just turn this on, you can listen to it while you're driving or do whatever, but I'm going to get right into the list and I'm going to tell you, I put this into a Market Movers Market Pulse index. So we track all kinds of indexes. I can pop this open and show you. We've got the SCI 500 that you all know. We talk about that on the top 5 cards every week, 500 of the most iconic sports cards and trading cards of all time. And then we do all these era indexes. We have player indexes. We do all kinds of things to help you find out the cards, the sort of who's who of sports and trading cards. So I made this list actually the top 50. And so if you want to get access to this index, you can do it actually completely free. Down in the show description below, you will find a link to this junk wax top 50 list, and you can click on it and it will open into your web browser. You can look at these cards completely free, no login required. Obviously, if you want to get access to more data, if you'd like to add some of these and track them to your collection and do so much more, you can download Market Movers app. You can go to marketmoversapp.com and use code DIVE, D-I-V-E. You'll get 14 days free and 20% off. So let's get into this list. One last thing, one last specification. The junk wax era is sort of a broad sweeping term that hasn't ever been totally agreed upon by collectors and hobbyists about what years does that include. A lot of people will say it's 87 to 93 or 94. For my money, I sort of snapped the chalk line in a very brief period from 87 to 92, and that's what I've done here. And the main reason I've done that is, starting in 1993, we saw the first refractor. We saw more inserts. Not the first inserts, those came earlier, mostly in 92, but we started to see different cards other than base cards, more premium chases, and I didn't want those taking over the list, and many of them would have. So I left it to 87 to 92, sort of in the vein of the base cards, And we're going to look at those, and hopefully you have some of these in your binder. And if you do, you can look at sending them off to grading and see how they might fare. So I'm going to jump to the bottom of the list. Actually, first, let's look at the last year and see how this index collectively has been doing. And if you had one of all these cards and you had started out, let me switch over to the price changes, and you had started out a year ago, that total investment would have cost you $9,300, just under, just over $9,000, $9,300. And if you wanted all of those cards today, or had all those cards today, or you wanted to go out and buy them today, it's going to be about $1,100 more. So this index is actually up 11.7% over the last year, and a lot of that growth is actually coming in the last 90 days. So in the last 90 days, it's up 10.7%. So we're seeing some hype and some buzz and some love behind these Junk Wax era cards. So let's go down and look at the list. So I'm going to jump to the bottom, and we're actually going to work our way up to the top. So if you're somebody who likes spoilers, I suppose you could have just slowed that down to 0.1x to get a freeze frame of everything, but I promise we're going to get to it. So again, this is the top 50. So starting on this list, I'm not going to go through the 26 through 50, but you can see we've got David Robinson, we've got Ron Harper, Michael Schumacher, the infamous Menendez brothers, Mark Jackson card, Richard Petty, and you can kind of scroll through the list. So I'll keep going up. The other thing that I didn't mention is that I actually kept this list to one card per player. I didn't want the whole list to be dominated by Michael Jordan cards. As exciting as that could be, we already have a Michael Jordan index. There's tons of Michael Jordan cards. So this is one card per player. And if there's anything notably missing that you're like, what about this card? How did you miss that? You got to let me know down in the comments. I know those of you who like to point out my mistakes will be sure to do that. So that's, let's see, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Am I looking at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25? Okay, so that's right. So we're going to start the list at number 25, and that card is Reggie Miller. This is Reggie Miller. This is his 1988 Fleer rookie card, number 57 in PSA 9 condition. Pop 2,926, and this card most recently sold for $84.50. You can see over the last 30 days, there have been 25 sales of this card, averaging $78. So Reggie Miller, one of the greatest shooters of all time, kind of the most notable three-point shooter before Steph Curry came onto the scene, and the former record holder. So Reggie Miller, obviously, he's really the one who started to change the game for three-pointers, and then we saw the likes of Ray Allen and then Steph Curry, and now the NBA is mostly broken because of three-pointers. So thanks, Reggie Miller. If you want to get one of his cards, PSA 9 condition, it's going to set you back $84.50 or roughly $80. Now I do like to show, and I'm going to show this briefly on all of these, the prices for these cards in PSA 10 condition, and what this does as a price multiplier, almost $2,000. So a lot of people find these cards and then they find a PSA 10 that sold on eBay, or even worse, one that's listed for sale on eBay, which really doesn't mean anything. And they get excited and they go, I know I have one of these Reggie Miller rookie cards. Holy cow, it's worth $2,000. I'm rich. We're going on a family vacation. Not necessarily. There's only 188 of these in existence. So you've got to have realistic expectations if you have a binder with these cards, and don't expect the card to get a PSA 10. All right, let's keep going to arguably the goofiest, ugliest card on this list, and I am a huge Mariano Rivera fan. Just incredible what he was able to do, basically throwing one single pitch over and over again for so many years. The greatest closer of all time, only unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer of all time. And what an outfit, what a design. What is this leaning post inside of the stadium? The colors, this thing definitely screams 1992. This is his 1992 Bowman, number 302, population 4,822. Last sold for $86 with a $111 average over the last 30 days. And in PSA 10, there are 1,631 of these, and the last sale was $550. So you may have a shot, a better shot at gemming one of these if you have one laying around than you did the Reggie Miller. At number 23, it's Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge, my favorite catcher of all time. Fantastic player with the Detroit Tigers. I wish there were more cool cards of Pudge in the Tigers uniform, specifically 90s stuff. There's just not, because he wasn't on the Tigers then. This is his 1991 Topps Traded, and this is the Tiffany, but it met the threshold at Pop 371. PSA 9 last sold for $87, And in PSA 10 condition, there are 211 of these, and it last sold for $459. Number 23, Pudge Ivan Rodriguez. At 22, we've got Tom Glavine, obviously a local legend and hero here in Atlanta. This is his 1998 Topps Tiffany number 779. Population 417 in a PSA 9. Last sold for $90, which actually, pretty big jump. Looking at the last 30 days, somebody snagged one of these for $50 and somebody just sold one for $90. So you can see some pretty big price volatility on these cards depending on when they ended, who listed them, how they sold. But in PSA 10 condition, well, let me actually show you another little cool tip in Market Movers. So I showed you this little quick view that you can access, but in the charts, you can actually also chart cards, get a full experience here. This will show you the PSA 10 last sold in December. There's actually only 62 of these in existence for $1,200. And if you do that, it'll actually let you look for items that are for sale. So it'll show you right now, there's 2 of these listed for $2,000 and $3,500. You can shop for the cards so you can compare multiple listings of the same card. Really, really handy tool that you've seen me use in the past. I wanted to make sure that you know that that is available. Let's jump down to number 21, and that is Jeff Bagwell. Jeff Bagwell in a PSA 9. This is his Topps traded Tiffany Pop 387. Last sold for $96. The sale before that was at $119. And in PSA 10 condition, this card is worth $812. Looks like he's got sort of like dusk behind him, looking a little bewildered. A lot of these photos from back in the 80s and 90s look like this. Doesn't seem like they were actually trying to take the photos for cards as much as just like, hey Jeff, check this out. And then they put it on arguably, his most iconic sports card of all time. So cool to see 40 years of baseball on this from the 1991 set. And overall a good card for one of the best Houston Astros of all time. All right, let's move up to number 20. We're going a row up here. And Scottie Pippen, who, he believes he may have been a better player than Michael Jordan and just about anybody who's ever played. Really unfortunate, honestly, to see what's gone down with Scottie and the relationship with MJ and that whole Bulls dynasty over time. But there is no denying the guy had talent and he was a critical part of their success. His 1988 Fleer, this is card number 120. Much better photo, I would say, going up for a layup. This is population 3,937. Last sold for a hair under $100, $109 30-day average. And in PSA 10 condition, this card will set you back $1,710 if you can manage to get it up to population 267. Counting down again, we've got Craig Biggio, the other notable Houston Astro from that era. This is his score traded glossy. And this card in PSA 9, Pop 334, last sold for $100, and that's the only sale over the last 30 days. In PSA 10 condition, just 96 of those in existence. That'll set you back or net you $356 if you happen to have one of those. Next up, it's Magic Johnson, and this is not his rookie card, obviously. That's 1980 scoring leaders. But this is the 1987 Fleer, which is a very desirable set. And like I mentioned before, there are a lot of set collectors from this set. So they like to go after and get one of every PSA 9 or one of every PSA 10. And this card is Pop 660. So there are actually a good number of these. This card last sold for $103 and averaged $105 over the last 30 days. In PSA 10, there are just 59 of these, and it last sold for $2,250 on March 27. At number 17, it is my favorite athlete of all time, Barry Sanders. I modeled my movement and my actions and my behavior on the field or the court after Barry when I was younger. I loved his approach to the game, no pretense, humble, just wanted to go out and compete and win. And unfortunately, the disaster and dumpster fire that was the Lions organization for so many years, I think just forced him into an early retirement. But everybody knows this card is the 1989 Score rookie card. That's about as much of a smile as you'd get out of Barry back then most of the time. And very iconic, portrait pose. In PSA 9, there are 12,300 of these. Last sold for $118, $125 30-day average. In a PSA 10, there are 2,410 of these, and that will set you back $1,400. Now, my favorite Barry card is actually his Topps traded where he's sitting on the bench, but I do like this one, and Jeff was kind enough to gift me one of these when he pulled it out of a pack last year. So really good card here on the Barry, and that is card number 17. At number 16, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, the greatest control probably of all time, known for that, the Professor Greg Maddux. This is his 1987 Topps traded Tiffany number 70T, and in PSA 9 condition, there are 2,064 of these, last sold for $120, $105 30-day average. In PSA 10, this is Pop 664, and that is worth $880, most recently having sold on March 30. I do like that wood grain design from back in 1987. It's one of the designs I like more from Topps. Not the best action photo. He's kind of following through, but probably threw a nasty two-seamer to somebody, painted on the corner, and that's the 1987 Greg Maddux at card number 16. Moving up to card 15, it's Emmitt Smith, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't like the Cowboys, I don't like the Cowboys, and I don't like seeing Emmitt Smith higher on the list than Barry Sanders, but it's because there are fewer of these cards. This is his 1990 score supplemental, and this card, decent design for 1990 score. Population 5,223 versus the 12,000 plus of Barry. Last sold for $120, 30-day average of $104. And in a PSA 10 condition, this card is Pop 796 and last sold for $1,370, less than Barry, on March 31st, 2025. Wayne Gretzky brings us in at card number 14. This is his 1987 O-Pee-Chee number 53. Obviously, again, not his rookie card. Population 833. PSA 9 in PSA 9 condition, last sold for $140. And in PSA 10, that'll set you back $1,050 for a card that, as of right now, is population 113. And what an achievement by Alexander Ovechkin to break the goals record, the career goals scored record of the Great One. I didn't think it was doable. Nobody will ever break Gretzky's points record or so many of his other records. But to break that goals record was something even Ovechkin said, I think about 10 years ago, that was impossible. And yet, here we are. So we're talking about him in terms of goal scoring capacity in the same vein as the Great One. But pretty much any Gretzky card from the 80s in PSA 9 or especially PSA 10 condition is going to be worth something. So if you have those laying around, or especially this one, check out the centering and the condition and see if that can net you some money. Let's keep counting down. We've got Brett Hull here. This is his 1988 O-Pee-Chee, number 66, PSA 9, Pop 1,058, last sold for $146, and 30-day average $143. In PSA 10 condition, this card is $4,150 for his rookie card, for a card that only has 63 of them graded. So I do like this one of Brett Hull. Sort of looking up, maybe it's the national anthem, who knows what's going on here, but obviously one of the other, incredibly talented, most talented hockey players of all time. This is his 1988 O-Pee-Chee rookie card, $146. Next up, we've got Sammy Sosa. This is his 1990 Topps Tiffany rookie card, card number 692. 559 of these in existence, last sold for $150 on March 18. Let's take a look at this in PSA 10 condition. It's Pop 195 and just $230, so not the kind of premium on this card for a low population card that you would expect from the 9 to the 10 like we saw with others. I will say on the 9, this card's been rising progressively over time, and the last few sales were a little bit more anomalous at $115 and $150. So who knows? You never know what's going on with some of these cards, or again, that's why I like to look at averages on cards like this. Look at the last 7, last 14, last 30 days to see what they go for, because certain outliers can happen that might not always make the most sense. All right, let's count it down now. We're at card number 11 with Bill Ripken. And well, this is the infamous error card. I'm going to pop this open, and fair warning, there is an error on it. Those of you who know. Some of the others may be able to spot it. I'm not going to say it, but there is an infamous error on this card that obviously generates a big command that Topps, let's say, playfully paid homage to with the Jackson Holiday card this past year. In PSA 9 condition, there are 8,424 of these, so there's quite a few. And yet, there are a lot of people who are willing to pay, on average, $151 for this card, with 44 sales just over the last 30 days alone. Now, in PSA 10 condition, there are 2,847 of these, and that last sold for $700 on April 7. So that is the infamous Bill Ripken FF error card at number 11. We're getting closer. We move up a list. And this card, what a shot. What an action shot here. We've got Mike Tyson. This is the 1987 A Question of Sport, a set that not a lot of people are necessarily familiar with. I don't know if you can see this. There's literally a mouthpiece flying through the air. This has to be one of the best photos, one of the best action photos of all time. And boxing obviously delivers a lot of those really cool shots. So in PSA 9 condition, this is Pop 386, so not a ton of these. Last sold for $160. Previous sale before that, $225. And in PSA 10 condition, there are only 36 of these. That'll set you back $1,660. At number 9, Dale Murphy. And I'm going to pop this open, and I'm going to pause. And I'm going to see, do you notice anything wrong with this card? Anything stand out? Anything weird? There is an issue. Notice the bottom of his bat knob is backwards, but more specifically, his jersey is backwards. So it says Braves, but it is backwards. So this card is actually called the Reverse Negative Error card of Dale Murphy. This is from 1989 Upper Deck, card number 357. And this card with this error is Pop 353. Last sold for $204, and in PSA 10, only 135 of these. Last sold for $610. So one of the interesting things about the junk wax era, there were error cards back then, and that's basically like the manufacturer messes something up unintentionally or maybe intentionally in some cases to create variety, which creates scarcity. And people decide, well, this is unique. I want that error card. Over time, error cards have largely lost their luster. There are a handful, maybe 10, 20, 30 of them that still, like this one, hold a lot of value. But in general, you see a lot of people bring error cards in from later years or even more recently. People don't really care about them anymore. Maybe you find the right collector who loves error cards, but they're kind of like printing plates where they might be super rare, but it doesn't mean anybody actually wants them because they're a one of one. This card, in this case with the Dale Murphy, or like the Frank Thomas, which we're going to see in a few moments, the no-name Frank Thomas, those definitely command a premium, and this Dale Murphy card is no exception. At number 8, we've got Larry Bird. This is his 1987 Fleer, Pop 393 in PSA 9 condition. Last sold for $257. Over the last 30 days, $283 average. And, good shot here. Good shot. Just grabbing the ball. I don't know what his legs do. I guess this must have been like a rebound, but like I said, this set's very in demand for set collectors. And in PSA 10, there are only 33 of these. So one of those is going to set you back $5,140. That last sold on January 4th of 2025. Number 8, Larry Bird. Number 7, this is not the infamous no-name Frank Thomas, which is missing his name down below, but this is his Topps Tiffany, card number 414. There are 459 of these in PSA 9 condition, and the card last sold for $456. Before that, $429. Now, if you have one of these in PSA 10 condition, there are only 109 of these, and that's going to set you back $2,400. So PSA 10 definitely getting the massive premium on this particular card. Number 6 is Frank Thomas. Number 5, we've got Chipper Jones. So there's a base version of this card. There's the Tiffany version, which is the one we're looking at. And then there is the Desert Shield. The Desert Shield cards were exclusive cards distributed and intended for military members as part of Operation Desert Shield. And those cards are even more expensive and a lower population count. So if we had looked at the Desert Shield for Chipper, would have been higher up on the list, but not as many of these didn't meet my Pop 200 threshold. In PSA 9 condition, this Tiffany version is at $555 for Chipper. And in PSA 10, there are only 44 of these. Last sold for $3,260. So many people, if they collected baseball cards back then, this was a pretty big chase card. Chipper was definitely one of the most popular players of his era and one of the all-time great Braves. So you might have one of these if you happen to snag some of the Tiffany's back then, pull it out of the binder or the top loader or whatever you might have it in and inspect it, because this one is definitely worth considering sending off to PSA. In fact, even if we look at the PSA 8, $279, PSA 7, $190, and so on and so forth down the list. So this one, just in general, probably worth getting graded and authenticated. We've made it to the top 5. Starting at number 5, it's Nolan Ryan, and I just mentioned it. I just mentioned the Desert Shield cards. So this is the Desert Shield. You can see the little stamped gold Desert Shield emblem on the top right, and this one actually is Population 222. No sales in the last 30 days. So the last sale was on February 16 for $600. And in PSA 10 condition, it is a Pop 60 worth $3,000. Last sale back October 25th of last year. So those don't come up often. If you happen to have some of these, if you have family members who were service members who may have had some of these, check them out and help them get them graded. At number 4, Shaq. Arguably the most undervalued player. I would put Shaq and Tim Duncan for sure in basketball cards and maybe across all sports as the two most undervalued athletes. I don't really understand it, and I really don't understand it with Shaq. Duncan's the kind of the consensus greatest power forward of all time. Shaq's in the mix with a lot of other great true big men centers all time in terms of where he ranks and lands. But this guy changed the game. He broke onto the scene incredibly fast, and Shaq is literally what got my dad into baseball or into basketball cards back in 1992 when he had a friend who was dabbling and going to card shops, and he started bringing home packs to me to collect these. So I had Shaq rookie cards and lots of different things. He was so popular. He obviously had a remarkable career, and he's a personality. He's sort of ticks all the boxes, and yet his card prices still aren't. They're not even in the tier of like Kobe or others. So really interesting. Let me know in the comments why you think that is. A lot of people say, oh, well, big men aren't collectible. Yeah, but he should be. Like, why? Why aren't they? He changed the game. He was a force, one of the most unstoppable forces ever. Well, this card is the Beam Team members only. So what does that mean? There are actually two of these. So if I look at this, there's actually a Beam Team, and that card's at $386. And then there's this Beam Team members only at $610. So what's the difference? Well, there is a little members only stamp on this card. So these members only cards actually came out of complete sets that were sent to Topps Stadium Club members. So you had to be a member of a program, you received the complete set, and then you would get, I believe, one of these Beam Team cards as part of that complete set, the members only Beam Teams. It's estimated that there are around 10,000 print run for each of these. So not a small number, but there's still this big premium over the regular Beam Teams. In the case of Shaq here, he's at population 289 on this card, and it last sold for $610, 611 30-day average. In PSA 10, there are only 60 of these, and the last sale was $9,300 back in December for a PSA 10 of this. So if you have a Beam Team, regular or members only of Shaq, definitely get that one. Bring it into your LCS or try to get it sent off to PSA, because even in the lower price tiers, like I say, if you look down, PSA 6, $175 and so on and so forth. So Shaq at number 4 on our list, and we're going to move over to Mr. Barry Bonds, who has been seeing a lot of love recently. People are starting to say, I don't care about the steroids. Everybody was on steroids. This guy, bottom line, is the greatest hitter that baseball has ever seen. The video game numbers, all kinds of unbreakable records and crazy stats. And even before the steroids, he was a heck of a baseball player. So this is his O-Pee-Chee. Now, O-Pee-Chee is basically Topps, but it was meant for, or it was part of Canadian-only distribution. What does that result in? Well, fewer of the cards. And when you're looking at for differences, that's why the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky's were so much more than the Topps and other things. And obviously the connection of Canada to hockey. But in the case of Bonds here, this is his O-Pee-Chee. There is a Topps version of this card. In PSA 9 for the O-Pee-Chee, there's 327 of these, and it last sold for $675. Before that, $510. And over the last, in PSA 10 condition, this card is worth $21,100. So if I pop this open, you can see there's only 39 PSA 10s, and that's not a lot. So Barry Bonds, obviously one of the greatest ever do it. This is his O-Pee-Chee rookie card at number 3. And at number 2, you knew these two players had to be at the top because they were the two most iconic athletes of their respective eras. At number 2, it is Ken Griffey Jr., and this is not his 1989 Upper Deck, which is obviously the iconic card and the one that most people want to have. But in the case of this card, no sales over the last 30 days, got to go back 60 days, $1,380 for his 1989 Bowman Tiffany card number 220, kneeling down before the game, striking a pose. And again, this is pop 491 in PSA 9 condition. If you have a PSA 10 of these, there's only 157 of them so far, $9,500 for a PSA 10, last sold in November of 2024. So Griffey, the kid, at number 2 on our list, and you knew, there was no doubt about it, at number 1, that Michael Jordan and his 1988 sticker. Now, you probably wouldn't have guessed that card, although obviously his 86 Fleer rookie didn't make the cut. But yes, it is this 1988 Fleer stickers, the iconic tongue out, dribbling down the court, fast break probably. Superstar sticker card here in PSA 9 condition. There are 248 of these. Last sold on March 13 for $2,380. And if you happen to have a PSA 10 of one of these, of which there are only 12, and none have sold recently. In fact, one has sold in the last year. There's 12, and that will net you $34,000. Last sold for $34,200. So if you have one of these laying around, check it out, because again, even the lower grades probably worth checking out and maybe getting it graded. That's the 1988 Fleer Jordan. Any Jordan from the junk wax era in PSA 9 condition and up is pretty much worth getting graded. And that rounds out the rest of our list. So what did you think of this? Do you love the junk wax era? Do you hate it? Hopefully this was a fun exercise. And if you like it, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to do more of these top 25 countdowns. Again, you can access this Market Pulse index with the link below. And then if you want to and you're interested in buying any of these cards and you want to support us, you can find items listed for sale in various conditions, and we do get a little bit of a cut for that. So as always, thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think, and until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.